Hey everyone. Coming up on this episode of the Inside Travel Talk podcast, Mark takes us on an incredible journey through Peru, from the Amazon rainforest to Machu Picchu, and shares why it might be one of the most fascinating destinations in the world. And in segment 2, we'll talk about one of the fastest growing cruise trends, American River Cruises. All that and more coming up next on Inside Travel Talk.
The Inside Travel Talk podcast and radio show, presented by BluePlanetVacations.com, contains travel deals, promotions, and offers that may be time sensitive. All offers and information were accurate when the show aired. Travel deals and offers change constantly and are capacity controlled and subject to change without notice.
Explore your world. It's the Inside Travel Talk podcast and radio show, presented by BluePlanetVacations.com. Call or text the show now, 801-649-3700, 801-649-3700, and check out the podcast at InsideTravelTalk.com. And now, here are your hosts, Patrick Wiscombe and Mark Faldmo.
Hello and welcome to the Inside Travel Talk podcast. I'm Justin, and I'm here with travel expert Mark Faldmo. Mark is the owner of Blue Planet Vacations, who has helped thousands of travelers explore the world, from Alaska cruises to European river cruises and destinations all over the globe. Mark, good to be hosting the podcast with you.
Justin, great to have you helping out.
We do have a little announcement today. We're actually making a small change to the format of the show. Instead of weekly episodes, we'll now release a new Inside Travel Talk podcast every 2 weeks. And the reason is simple. We want to go deeper into travel. Instead of rushing through topics, we want to really explore destinations, travel trends, cruise experiences, and the things that help travelers plan better trips.
Exactly. One thing we've learned over the years working with clients is that people want more than just quick tips. They want the stories, they want the context, they want to understand why a destination is special. So that's what we're going to do with the podcast going forward.
All right, Mark, let's start with a big airline story this week. Southwest Airlines recently introduced assigned seating for the first time in their history, and it's getting some serious pushback from travelers. For decades, Southwest was known for its open seating system. You'd check in, get your boarding group, and then pick any available seat when you boarded. But starting in 2026, that system is gone. Travelers now receive assigned seats and different boarding groups based on fare type and loyalty status. And the reaction from customers has been pretty intense.
Yeah, Justin, this is actually one of the biggest airline culture shifts we've seen in years. Southwest built their entire brand around that open seating concept. It was simple, it was efficient, and it created this almost fun boarding experience. You'd see people joking in line, people racing for the exit rows. It was part of the Southwest personality. But now they've introduced assigned seats and premium seating options.
And the response online has been pretty dramatic. Some travelers say it makes Southwest feel like just another airline. Others complain about confusion with overhead bin space and boarding order.
Yeah, and here's the interesting part. From a business perspective, the change actually makes sense. Most travelers today expect to choose their seat when booking a flight. That's how Delta, United, and American operate. And surveys showed a lot of customers wanted that option, but Southwest loyalists were used to something different.
It was almost part of the airline's identity.
Exactly. And when you take away something that's been part of a brand for 50 years, people notice. But I'll say this, once travelers get used to it, I think it will settle down. Airlines are constantly evolving.
I think you're right. It reminds me of when airlines started charging for checked bags years ago. Everyone hated it. Now people just accept it.
Exactly. Travelers adapt.
Another big travel story this week. Several states, including Hawaii, Massachusetts, California, Illinois, Pennsylvania, and Oregon, are pushing new regulations to crack down on hidden travel fees. These are the kinds of fees that show up after you think you've already booked something. Things like resort fees, service charges, or mandatory taxes that weren't included in the original advertised price.
Yeah, and this is actually a really important topic because travelers often feel frustrated when they see a great price online and then suddenly the total cost is much higher.
Right. You see a hotel advertised for $199 a night, but after resort fees and taxes, it might be $275.
And from the travel advisor side, transparency is really important. One of the benefits of working with a travel advisor is that we explain those costs up front. There are no surprises.
And Hawaii in particular is really focused on this issue because tourism is such a big part of their economy. They want visitors to have a positive experience.
Absolutely. Hawaii depends heavily on tourism, so they want travelers to feel like they're getting honest pricing. And honestly, I think this trend will continue. We're probably going to see more regulations around travel pricing in the future.
All right, Mark, let's move into our main travel topic today, and this one sounds incredible. You've talked about a lot of destinations on the show over the years, but today we're going to focus on Peru, and specifically what you've called one of the most complete travel experiences you've ever done. This is a journey that goes from the Amazon rainforest all the way to Machu Picchu. So, Mark, where does a trip like this even begin?
Well, Justin, it actually begins in Lima, Peru, which is the capital city. But honestly, the adventure really starts when you leave Lima and fly into the Amazon basin. And this part of the trip surprised me the most. When people think of Peru, they almost always think about Machu Picchu, which is incredible. But the Amazon rainforest portion of the trip was absolutely unforgettable. We flew into a small jungle city called Puerto Maldonado, which is considered the gateway to the Peruvian rainforest. From there, we boarded a motorized boat and traveled down the Madre de Dios River for about 2 hours. And this is where things start to feel like you've stepped into another world. There are no roads, no towns, no cities, just jungle. When we arrived at the lodge, it honestly felt like something straight out of a National Geographic documentary.
So this is not just visiting the Amazon. You're actually staying in the rainforest.
Exactly. We stayed at a jungle eco lodge deep inside the Amazon biosphere, and the biodiversity there is unbelievable. The region is home to over 1,000 species of birds, hundreds of tree species, and some of the most fascinating wildlife anywhere in the world. The guides take you on hikes through the rainforest, boat rides through oxbow lakes and canopy towers where you can see miles of jungle. But one of the most memorable experiences was going out at night. We took a guided night walk in the jungle with flashlights, and suddenly you realize that the forest completely changes after dark. You see insects, frogs, and sometimes glowing eyes along the riverbanks, usually caimans, which are related to crocodiles. It's exciting, a little bit eerie, and absolutely fascinating.
I imagine you're hearing the jungle the entire time, too.
That's actually something people remember the most. The sounds of the rainforest never stop. Birds, insects, monkeys. It's constant. And then in the morning, you wake up and watch the sunrise over the Amazon canopy. It's peaceful and wild at the same time. For me personally, this was my favorite part of the entire Peru journey.
So after the Amazon portion of the trip, you head into the Andes Mountains.
Yes, after a few days in the rainforest, we fly to Cusco, which was the capital of the Inca Empire. Cusco sits high in the Andes Mountains and is actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's one of the most fascinating cities in South America because you see several layers of history all in one place. You have the ancient Inca stone foundations, Spanish colonial buildings built on top of those structures, and modern Peru all blended together. Walking through Cusco is like walking through a living museum, and the streets are cobblestone. Many areas don't allow cars, and the main square is surrounded by historic churches, restaurants, and shops. It's just a beautiful place to explore.
And this is also where you start exploring the Sacred Valley.
The Sacred Valley of the Incas is one of the most scenic regions in Peru. The valley follows the Urubamba River and is surrounded by massive Andean peaks. We visit the famous Pisac Market, where local artisans sell traditional textiles, pottery, and crafts. It's a colorful and vibrant place and gives you a real sense of local culture. Then we visit Ollantaytambo, which is one of the most impressive Inca sites in the Sacred Valley. What makes Ollantaytambo special is that it's one of the few Inca towns that still retains its original layout. You walk the same narrow stone streets that existed hundreds of years ago. It's one of the best preserved examples of Inca engineering and urban planning.
And then comes the moment everyone is waiting for, Machu Picchu.
Yes, and the way we visit Machu Picchu on this itinerary is really special. We take a scenic train ride through the Sacred Valley following the Urubamba River. The mountains get steeper and steeper as you approach Machu Picchu. Eventually, you arrive in the small mountain town of Aguas Calientes, which sits at the base of the citadel. One thing I love about this itinerary is that we stay overnight there. That means we can enter Machu Picchu twice. The first visit gives us a full guided tour of the ancient citadel. Machu Picchu has more than 150 buildings, including temples, terraces, and ceremonial areas perched high above the valley. But the real magic happens the next morning. Early in the morning, we return to the citadel and watch the sunrise over the Andes Mountains. The clouds lift, the mountains appear, and the ruins slowly reveal themselves in the morning light. It's honestly one of the most beautiful travel moments I've ever experienced. You realize you're standing in one of the most remarkable archaeological sites in the world. It's something every traveler should see at least once.
Now, Mark, while we're talking about wildlife in Peru, I actually learned something recently that surprised me. Did you know that the bear that inspired the story of Paddington Bear actually comes from Peru?
Yes, and that's one of those really fun travel facts. Paddington Bear, the famous children's character who ends up in London, is actually said to be from Darkest, Peru. And the real animal behind that story is called the spectacled bear. Yeah, they're called that because they have these light-colored markings around their eyes that look a bit like glasses. They're actually the only bear species native to South America. And they live in the cloud forests high in the Andes Mountains. So technically, the natural habitat of these bears is not far from Machu Picchu and the Sacred Valley.
That's amazing. So travelers are basically visiting Paddington Bear's homeland when they go to Machu Picchu.
And what made this even more interesting for our trip is that we stayed at a beautiful property called the Inca Terra Machu Picchu Pueblo Hotel in the village of Aguas Calientes. This hotel is surrounded by rainforest gardens and nature trails, and they actually support a spectacled bear conservation project nearby. There's a small sanctuary where injured or rescued spectacled bears are cared for and protected. So it was really fascinating to learn about these animals while being right there in the region where they live.
That's a pretty incredible connection between a childhood story and a real destination.
It really is. And that's one of the things I love about travel. You go somewhere like Peru expecting amazing history and places like Machu Picchu, but along the way you discover all these unexpected stories, wildlife, culture, history that make the trip even more memorable.
And if you go at the right time of year, there's another really unique cultural experience on this itinerary too, the Inti Raymi Festival.
Yes, and this is something very few travelers get to see. Every year on June 24th, Cusco hosts the Inti Raymi, which means Festival of the Sun. It's a reenactment of an ancient Inca ceremony honoring the sun god Inti. Thousands of performers dressed in traditional Inca costumes recreate the ceremony. The procession begins at the Temple of the Sun and continues to the ancient fortress of Sacsayhuaman, where the main rituals take place. You see the Inca emperor carried into the plaza on a golden throne, surrounded by priests, warriors, and musicians. It's colorful, dramatic, and deeply tied to Peru's cultural heritage. And the incredible thing about this festival is that it only happens one day each year. So when you're there, you're witnessing something truly special.
And the trip finishes back in Lima.
We end the trip in Lima, which is a fantastic culinary city. One highlight is the Larco Museum, which traces Peru's history through thousands of years of civilization. You see artifacts from cultures that existed long before the Inca Empire. It really helps put everything you experience during the trip into perspective.
So if someone asked you what makes this Peru itinerary so special, what would you say?
I would say it's the diversity of experiences. In one trip, you explore the Amazon rainforest, ancient Inca cities, the Sacred Valley, Machu Picchu, and vibrant Peruvian culture. Very few destinations in the world offer that much variety in one journey. And honestly, Peru is one of those places that stays with you long after you return home.
Mark, that Peru itinerary really sounds incredible. From the Amazon rainforest all the way to Machu Picchu, and even experiencing the Inti Raymi festival. Honestly, after hearing this conversation, Peru just moved way up on my travel list.
It really is one of the most complete travel experiences you can have. If Peru is on your bucket list, this is the kind of itinerary that lets you see the country the right way. The Amazon, the Sacred Valley, Cusco, and of course, Machu Picchu. If anyone listening is interested in visiting Peru, we'd love to help you plan it. You can reach out to us at Blue Planet Vacations at 8887-187-717, and we can help design a trip similar to the one we talked about today.
All right, Mark, let's talk about the travel deal of the week. And this week, we're highlighting Delta Vacations.
Yeah, this is a great promotion. Delta Vacations is offering limited time savings on vacation packages worldwide. Travelers can save up to $250 on destinations across Europe, the Caribbean, Hawaii, and many other locations. And one of the best parts is that when you book a Delta Vacations package, you earn SkyMiles on the entire trip, not just the flight.
So you're earning miles on the hotel and other components too.
And for frequent Delta travelers, especially Medallion members, there are often additional bonus mile promotions. So it's a great way to stretch the value of a vacation. Delta Vacations makes it very easy because everything is packaged together. And right now, with the limited time savings and the ability to earn SkyMiles on the entire vacation, it's a great opportunity for travelers who like to maximize their miles. Just reach out to us at Blue Planet Vacations, and we can help you find the best Delta Vacations package and make sure you take advantage of the current savings and bonus miles.
And earning miles on your whole vacation instead of just the flight is always a nice bonus. All right, that wraps up segment 1 of the Inside Travel Talk podcast. Coming up next, we'll talk about Norwegian Cruise Line's brand new ship, Norwegian Luna, a massive new cruise terminal planned for Los Angeles. And then Mark will take us into one of the fastest growing cruise segments right now, American River Cruises. That's coming up next.
They've literally traveled millions of miles to answer your travel-related questions. Yeah, they really have. You're listening to the Inside Travel Talk podcast and radio show, presented by BluePlanetVacations.com, America's best travel advisors. Patrick and Mark will be back after these messages.
This segment of Inside Travel Talk is sponsored by El Dorado Spa Resorts. Escape to Cancun's Riviera Maya with authentic, all-inclusive luxury at an El Dorado Spa Resort. To book your romantic beach getaway, contact Blue Planet Vacations at 888-718-7717 or blueplanetvacations.com.
Now, back to the Inside Travel Talk podcast and radio show, presented by BluePlanetVacations.com, America's best travel advisors. Call or text the show right now, 801-649-3700, 801-649-3700, and check out the podcast at InsideTravelTalk.com. Here's Patrick Wiscombe and Mark Faldmo.
Welcome back to the Inside Travel Talk podcast. I'm Justin here with Mark Faldmo, and in this segment we're diving into cruise news and cruise travel. Let's start with Norwegian Cruise Line. They've just taken delivery of their newest ship, Norwegian Luna.
This ship is part of Norwegian's new Prima Plus class. The ship is about 1,056 feet long and can carry around 3,500 passengers. And these ships are designed to feel more spacious than traditional cruise ships.
What makes this ship unique?
Several things. One is the outdoor space. Norwegian designed Ocean Boulevard, an outdoor promenade that wraps around the ship. There are infinity pools, outdoor lounges, and restaurants. Another highlight is the Aqua Slide Coaster, a hybrid water slide and roller coaster. It's pretty incredible.
Another cruise development, Los Angeles has revealed plans for a new outer harbor cruise terminal.
This is a big deal. Los Angeles is already one of the busiest cruise ports on the West Coast, but the new terminal is designed to handle larger ships and increase capacity, which means more cruise options for travelers in the Western U.S.
All right, Mark, our main cruise topic today is something we don't talk about enough: American river cruises.
And this is actually one of the fastest growing segments in cruising. Most people think of river cruising in Europe, but the United States has incredible river cruise experiences too.
And the leading company in this space is American Cruise Lines.
Exactly. American Cruise Lines focuses entirely on U.S. river cruising. Their ships are smaller and designed specifically for American waterways.
So what are some of the most popular itineraries?
The Mississippi River is the most famous. You can cruise from New Orleans all the way to Memphis or even St. Paul. These cruises explore American history, Civil War sites, historic towns, and cultural landmarks.
Almost like a floating history tour.
Then there's the Columbia and Snake River Cruise in the Pacific Northwest. This itinerary follows the path of Lewis and Clark. You see dramatic canyons, waterfalls, and vineyards. It's one of the most scenic river cruises anywhere.
And you mentioned the Tennessee and Ohio rivers too.
Yes, those itineraries connect cities like Nashville, Chattanooga, and Louisville. They focus heavily on American music, culture, and regional cuisine.
So these are cruises where you really learn about the destination.
And American Cruise Lines offers some unique benefits: all-inclusive pricing, smaller ships, large staterooms, and personalized service.
So Mark, if someone has never taken a Mississippi River cruise before, what's a good example of what the trip actually looks like?
That's a great question. One of my favorite itineraries to recommend is the Lower Mississippi River Cruise, which sails between Memphis and New Orleans. This itinerary really captures the history, culture, and music that made the Mississippi River so important in American history. You're literally cruising through the heart of the American South. The journey begins either in Memphis, famous for blues music, and of course Elvis Presley's Graceland, or in New Orleans, one of the most unique cities in the United States. Then the ship slowly travels down the Mississippi River, stopping in historic river towns along the way. Some of the highlights include Vicksburg, Mississippi, one of the most important Civil War sites in the country; Natchez, known for its beautiful antebellum mansions; St. Francisville, a charming southern town with historic homes and oak-lined streets; Baton Rouge, Louisiana's capital, with a rich Cajun and Creole heritage; Oak Alley Plantation, famous for its stunning avenue of 300-year-old oak trees. What I love about this cruise is that it really feels like a journey through American history. You're visiting Civil War battlefields, historic plantations, river towns that thrived during the steamboat era, and cities that shaped American music. And between ports, you're relaxing on the ship, watching the scenery change along the riverbanks. It's slow travel in the best possible way.
Now, Mark, the Mississippi River is probably the most famous river cruise in the United States, but it's not the only one. Another itinerary that's really growing in popularity is cruising the Columbia and Snake Rivers in the Pacific Northwest.
Yes, and this is a fantastic cruise that a lot of travelers don't even realize exists. The Columbia and Snake Rivers cruise follows the historic route of the Lewis and Clark expedition, sailing between Portland, Oregon, and Clarkston, Washington, through some of the most dramatic scenery in the United States. Instead of plantation homes and Civil War sites like you see on the Mississippi, This cruise is all about natural beauty and the history of the American West. You're sailing past towering cliffs, forested mountains, vineyards, and spectacular waterfalls through the Columbia River Gorge, which is one of the most scenic river valleys in North America.
So this cruise feels more like an outdoor adventure.
Some of the highlights include visits to Multnomah Falls, Mount St. Helens, Sacagawea State Park, and the Lewis and Clark Discovery Center, where you learn about the explorers who first mapped the American West. And along the way, the ship stops in charming towns like Astoria, Hood River, and the Dalles, each with its own history and Pacific Northwest culture. So while the Mississippi River Cruise tells the story of early American history and the Civil War, the Columbia and Snake Rivers tell the story of westward expansion and the exploration of the American frontier.
So between the Mississippi and the Columbia River cruises, you're really seeing two completely different sides of American history.
One explores the historic American South, and the other explores the dramatic landscapes and pioneering history of the Pacific Northwest. And both are fantastic ways to experience the United States from the water.
That actually sounds very different from a typical ocean cruise.
It is. River cruising is much more immersive. The ships are smaller, usually around 150 to 180 guests. So the experience feels very personal. You're docking right in the center of these historic towns. You step off the ship and you're immediately exploring the destination. And on board the cruise line does a fantastic job bringing the region to life with lectures, local musicians, and Southern cuisine inspired by the ports you're visiting.
Now, Mark, we've talked quite a bit about American cruise lines, which really pioneered U.S. river cruising. But another major player has entered the Mississippi River market recently: Viking River Cruises. And Viking is already a huge name in European river cruising.
Yes, and Viking entering the Mississippi River market was actually a pretty big moment in the cruise industry. For years, Viking focused primarily on Europe, sailing rivers like the Danube, Rhine, and Seine. But a few years ago, they introduced their first American river ship called the Viking Mississippi, and this ship was specifically designed to sail the Mississippi River.
And it's a fairly large river ship compared to some of the others.
Yeah, the Viking Mississippi carries about 386 guests with around 147 crew members, so the service level is very high. It's still a small ship compared to ocean cruising, but it's quite spacious for a river cruise. The design is very Scandinavian, clean lines, big windows, and lots of light. Viking tends to focus on elegant, relaxed spaces rather than flashy entertainment.
That's actually one of the things Viking is known for, right? They don't really focus on casinos or water slides or things like that.
Viking has always marketed their cruises as destination-focused travel. They don't have casinos. They don't allow children on board, and they really focus on cultural enrichment. So instead of Broadway shows or big productions, you'll often have historians giving lectures, musicians performing regional music, culinary demonstrations, destination experts explaining the history of the region. So the cruise becomes more of a learning experience.
Which actually makes a lot of sense for the Mississippi River, because that river has so much American history connected to it.
The Mississippi River is basically the backbone of American history. When you sail the river, you're traveling through the same waterways that shaped commerce, music, literature, and the expansion of the United States. Mark Twain wrote about it. The Civil War was fought along it. Blues and jazz music were born along its banks. So the Viking cruise really leans into that history.
So what are some of the itineraries Viking offers on the Mississippi?
One of the most popular itineraries is the Mississippi Delta Explorer, which sails between New Orleans and Memphis. This is typically about an 8-day cruise with multiple guided tours along the way. Along the journey, you visit places like Baton Rouge, Natchez, Vicksburg, Greenville, Memphis. Each stop tells a different story about the American South.
And that part of the country has such a unique culture.
It really does. You experience Cajun and Creole cuisine in Louisiana. You learn about Civil War history in places like Vicksburg And then in Memphis, you dive into the roots of blues, rock and roll, and American music. Some itineraries even include excursions to places like Beale Street or the Memphis Rock and Soul Museum. So the cruise is almost like a moving cultural tour of the South.
And Viking also offers longer cruises on the river too.
Yes, and this is something I really like. They offer a longer itinerary called America's Great River. This cruise sails the entire Mississippi from St. Paul, Minnesota, all the way down to New Orleans. That's about a 15-day journey covering the entire length of the river. So you start in the upper Midwest with scenic river bluffs and small historic towns. Then you travel through the heartland and eventually reach the deep South. It's a fascinating way to see how geography and culture change along the river.
That really sounds like a journey through America.
That's exactly what it is. You see small river towns, major cities, historic battlefields, and cultural landmarks. And because river ships dock right in town, you're stepping off the ship directly into these historic places. There's no long bus ride from a port. You're right there.
And the onboard experience sounds very much like Viking's European river cruises.
The experience is calm, sophisticated, and very immersive.
So if someone was deciding between Viking and American Cruise Lines, how would you describe the difference?
That's a great question. Both are excellent options. American Cruise Lines has been sailing American rivers longer, and they tend to emphasize American heritage and regional experiences. Viking brings their European river cruise style to the Mississippi, so the ships feel very modern and international. It really comes down to the type of experience travelers are looking for. But the good news is the Mississippi River now has some truly outstanding cruise options.
Mark, one thing I've always associated with the Mississippi River is those classic paddlewheel riverboats. Do those still exist on these cruises today?
They absolutely do, and that's one of the really fun things about sailing with American Cruise Lines. In addition to their modern river ships, they also have traditional paddle wheel riverboats that look very similar to the classic steamboats people imagine when they think about the Mississippi River. These ships feature the large red paddle wheel on the back of the vessel, wide outdoor decks, and that historic riverboat look that really connects you to the heritage of the Mississippi.
So it really gives you that classic riverboat experience.
You feel like you're stepping into a piece of American history. At the same time, the inside of the ship is completely modern with spacious staterooms, great dining, and comfortable lounges. So you get the romance and nostalgia of the paddle wheel era, but with all the modern comforts of a luxury cruise.
That actually sounds like the perfect way to experience the Mississippi River.
It really is. It's a great combination of historic atmosphere and modern travel comfort, and that's something American Cruise Lines does extremely well.
And it sounds like this segment of cruising is growing quickly.
More travelers are discovering that you don't have to go to Europe to have an amazing river cruise experience. Some of the most fascinating history and culture in the world is right here in the United States, and the Mississippi River is the perfect way to explore it.
All right, Mark, let's wrap up the cruise segment with our cruise deal of the week. And this week's deal ties in perfectly with what we've been talking about, American River Cruises.
Yes, and this is actually a really good promotion right now from American Cruise Lines. They're offering free airfare on select sailings, plus savings of up to $1,000 per stateroom on a number of their U.S. river cruises, and this includes itineraries on the Mississippi River, the Columbia and Snake Rivers, and several other American waterways.
Free airfare is a pretty big deal when it comes to cruise vacations.
Airfare can often be one of the biggest costs when planning a trip. So when a cruise line includes airfare, it can make the overall vacation much more affordable. It also simplifies the planning process because the cruise line coordinates the flights with your sailing.
And these cruises are all-inclusive experiences, right?
Yes, that's another great part of American Cruise Lines. Their cruises typically include accommodations in very spacious staterooms, most shore excursions, onboard dining and regional cuisine, enrichment programs, and local entertainment. So once you're on board, there aren't a lot of extra costs. It's a very relaxed way to travel.
And it sounds like these cruises are really popular right now.
More travelers are discovering that river cruising isn't just for Europe. The United States has incredible rivers filled with history, culture, and scenery. You can explore the historic towns of the Mississippi River, the dramatic landscapes of the Columbia River Gorge, or even some of the music and culinary traditions of the American South. And you're doing it from a comfortable small ship where the pace is slower and the experience feels much more personal.
So if someone is interested in taking advantage of this deal, what's the best way to learn more?
The easiest way is to contact us at Blue Planet Vacations. We can help travelers compare the different itineraries, find the best sailing dates, and make sure they get the best value with the current promotions. River cruises tend to fill up early because the ships are smaller, so it's always a good idea to start planning sooner rather than later.
And honestly, after this conversation, I think a lot of people will be adding a Mississippi or Columbia River cruise to their travel wish list.
It's a fantastic way to explore the United States in a completely different way.
All right, Mark, let's recap today's show. We talked about Southwest Airlines' big shift to assigned seating, new efforts to crack down on hidden travel fees, a once-in-a-lifetime journey through Peru, and the growing popularity of American river cruises.
Yeah, and the biggest message is this. Travel continues to evolve, new destinations, new ships, new experiences, and that's what keeps it exciting.
And we'll close with a quote that really fits today's show. The world is a book, and those who do not travel read only one page. So keep exploring, keep discovering. And we'll see you next time on the Inside Travel Talk podcast.
That's it. That's the end of the show. You've been listening to the Inside Travel Talk podcast and radio show with Patrick Wiscombe and Mark Faldmo, presented by BluePlanetVacations.com. Book your adventure right now. Call 888-718-7717. That's 888-718-7717. Thanks for listening. Have a great week.
This segment of Inside Travel Talk is sponsored by Star Clippers. For over 30 years, Star Clippers has offered unique, authentic tall ship sailing experiences featuring creative itineraries throughout the Mediterranean, Caribbean, and Central America. To book your unique Star Clipper sailing adventure, contact Blue Planet Vacations at 888-718-7717 or blueplanetvacations.com.